Hi, welcome to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about innovation strategies in contact centers. And I'm Margaret Wise, Chief Revenue Officer with ActiveProspect. And welcoming our guest today, we have Jacob Thorpe with Squeeze and Ethan Ewing with ProPair AI. So we were just chatting backstage about how we were excited to be talking about something that wasn't FCC specific after several months of really diving deep into that and being able to talk about business strategies on how you can improve productivity, efficiency, and leverage some of the latest technology on the market in AI. So with that, Jacob, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and Squeeze.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, Margaret. Thank you. My name's Jacob Thorpe. I'm with Squeeze. I've been Squeeze for almost a decade, and Squeeze is a sales experience provider where we nurture leads on behalf of our partners and clients. So we're a service provider / partner for consumer direct brands that utilize us to contact, qualify, and convert their leads through omni-channel solutions. We have 3 contact centers based out of 2 out in Utah and 1 in Idaho, all onshore. And we're very tech forward. And my role with Squeeze is I'm over our partnerships and client services. So it's to come up with solutions and contact cadences to help our partners have success. I've been doing that for a while, and I really enjoy it. So I'm excited to talk today about some of the advancements in AI and some of the strategies that we're utilizing internally to help our partners win. And yeah, this is a great opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. And Ethan, will you introduce yourself, please?
Of course. Yeah. Awesome to be here. And I can vouch for Jacob and Squeeze. They are technology forward for sure. So it's fun to be on the panel. And Margaret and ActiveProspect, I've been big fans of that business for a long time. ProPair, really, we're a custom machine learning model shop. So for our customers, we're building custom models using their data, so first-party data. That allows them to better assign, prioritize, nurture leads. We're pretty straightforward. We sit behind CRMs, behind lead management systems, behind dialers and contact centers, and append predictive values to customers' data. And so we help them with use cases, but primarily think about us as a big model factory is how we like to describe ourselves.
Well, thanks to you both. You're very valued partners of our team and really excited to bring both of you and the innovative solutions that you have to our audience today. So thanks again for being here. I thought it'd be fun for a minute just to take a walk back down memory lane, because I feel like contact centers have had some really significant milestone moments where technology has transformed. And I thought I'd ask each of you to share something that when you reflect back on, what do you think was a big moment of inflection or impact in business changing to kind of bring us up to until we get to the point today and what we'll talk about today?
I'm gonna let you kick it off, Jacob.
Yeah, no problem. So I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I think there's been some advances in technology recently that have really enabled us to get to where we are today. One of them is premise to cloud-based technologies. I think that was huge for a lot of reasons. Obviously, the lower costs or the lower fixed costs, scalability, the ability to rapidly scale instead of having these premise-based servers. You've got these cloud-based applications that you can quickly update and that were really flexible. And then the improvement on those systems is obviously much more rapid because of that flexibility. But then you take kind of that cloud-based technology, which really set the stage for like COVID era remote workforces. That was huge, building systems and processes to build accountability for remote workforces when everyone was working from home. I think that really transformed the contact center space. At Squeeze, for instance, I remember the day before, or the day that kind of happened, and we were all scrambling to get our agents' computers signed out and sent home. Historically, we had only worked in office. I mean, very, very rarely would we let someone work from home. We just didn't have the systems to enforce performance and coaching and quality and things like that as we would have liked to. But we pushed everyone remote, and actually during COVID, we grew a ton because that the ability to have people working from remote opened up our employee pool. It allowed us to scale and add agents much more rapidly. And it also forced us to be on top of our game with managing performance. And all of a sudden we had the ability to do those things. And so I think those are two that come to mind as I've been thinking about this. And I think that both of those, the cloud-based systems and then the remote workforce, has actually kind of set the stage for artificial intelligence and the applications of that as we see it today. Ethan, what have you what's coming?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it depends, Margaret, how far back we want to go. But I remember I used to call leads off of index cards. So the development of the CRM and Salesforce and Velocify in the mortgage industry obviously was huge. So, but that's going way back. But I think you nailed it, Jacob. COVID was really critical in that. I think before then, there was tools and processes and approaches that certainly for consumer direct shops were using in their businesses, and they were available. But there was not as much adoption with the whole team, and there wasn't as much enforcement of that. And so what we saw during COVID was, hey, everybody's remote at this point. And now it's like, hey, we have these tools, and there was more enforcement or more oversight of how individual sales agents, or in the case of call center reps, were using those tools, and more of a requirement around that. And that was frankly like management's job went from being like walking around and checking on people to like, are you using these tools and these systems? And so it created a great amount of efficiency and productivity gains there because there was just adoption within the sales team. And I think that legacy, what we've seen is just that legacy has persisted to today. So it's great. Our working with our customers, it's no longer a question of, okay, are my agents going to use this tool? The processes and the systems are in place where adoption of tools, adoption of values and enhancement values, verification values, all those things are just like, they're involved, they're in the workflows now. So that was a big, that was a huge, COVID was just a huge period.
Yeah. Ethan, I'm with you in terms of when I was thinking about this question, I was going way back in time. And I was remembering when we started getting soft phones on our computer and, how that was. And I started out in CRM about 25 years ago. And so fast forward from that a little bit, you had it on your computer, soft phone. But I remember like just the very beginnings of AI. We weren't even calling it AI at the time. But there was a tool by a company called Inside Sales at that time, who's since been acquired. But they would like queue up for you who you should call when based on what was the highest likelihood for somebody to answer on that. And, and that was just, so innovative at the time. Just some of those very, very early seeds of what really brings us forward to what we'll talk about today, which is, how does AI show up in this today in a very active, way. So with that, I'd love to ask a question of the audience. We've got a poll. We want to hear where you guys are in terms of, are you kind of in that bucket of going way back, pre-AI? Are you fast forward to today? And are you already starting to leverage AI in your business? So let's run a poll for the audience and see where you guys are in your journeys.
And Margaret, while that poll's out there, just to build on that comment, like the inside sales example is a great one. And there are these isolated tools that, may be adopted by a handful of folks or a handful of companies or a handful of agents. And now what you're seeing is we're in an environment where, the amount of data computing capacity that folks can do, those tools and those types of behaviors, it took a long time, but like we are just seeing over the last, and Jacob, you see this over the last year or two, we're starting to see that that's becoming table stakes, right? That now is that if you're not running your business using these values, using those predictions, using the insights that you have, you really do risk kind of staying behind and getting outflanked. So it's that inside sales example was a great one because it was kind of niche. I was that's cool, and now like we're almost to the point. We're not quite there yet, but we're almost to the point. 10 years later of like you kind of have to have those things in order to stay competitive.
Yeah, it's following that curve of nice to have to have to have.
Yeah.
for sure.
And the more people adopt those nice to haves, the more important that quickly becomes a have to have. I think about, 10 years ago, primarily what we did was we would receive batches or lists, and that's what we would dial.
Yes.
And now basically everything that I do is on a live API with push, pull, lead updates, status updates with our partners to make sure that things are happening real time without manual interference. It's automated and it's systematized so that we can trust it a little bit more too, and it's more productive. But that's not something that 10 years ago I think a lot of people were doing or had the capability to do. But now, Ethan, like you said, the computing power and the integrations that are, once again, table stakes between all of these different technologies and softwares, it's table stakes now.
Yep. I want to make sure everybody clicked over to the poll and had a chance to answer over in the poll. I see some of the answers coming in, but just want to make sure everybody clicked over and respond to that. And what we're seeing in the answers back is we got a little bit of a split between using or implementing AI, data security. I've got a couple of responses there. And then optics of putting jobs at risk as well, which I think is something we see a lot in the headlines, and it's certainly worthy to address. But when we think about that and we think about using and implementing AI, I think it's really good to think about the kind of the high level, what are the categories that AI fall into? And so, Ethan, I wanted to ask if you would talk a little bit about how you think about generative versus predictive AI, and how should companies think about those differently, complementary? How do you leverage both of those inside of your contact center?
Yeah, and if you allow me, like a little bit of context here, we've been ProPair has been around for 8 years, and when my partner and I first started the business, we spent a lot of time talking about AI, ML. He's the data scientist. He runs the machines. He builds the machines. He and his team build the machines. They update all of our models. They keep the thing going. And he always said, "Hey, use machine learning. Technically, machine learning is what we're doing." So from a marketing perspective, though, you've got AI, ML, and I've gotten more intimate with the confusion around the perception of AI and ML. And so when you think about artificial intelligence, you think about machine learning. Artificial intelligence is a very broad category, and machine learning can be a little bit more specific. But really, bring it forward to today. And there's two main areas of AI that people think about or that people talk about. And the one that gets all the sizzle and that we talk about the most is generative AI. And generative AI, I use Google Gemini, or it's Google's version of ChatGPT. I use it every day, all day. I use it for everything across my life. I use it on the weekends, and I use it for a ton of different use cases. I posted a LinkedIn use case recently about something I was using it for my call logs, recording my sales call logs and getting feedback on how I present. So generative AI is a huge category and is the one that is going to take over the world, right? That's the one that's saying, hey, basically we're going to automate everybody's jobs. Predictive AI has been around for a long time, and predictive AI is also known, at least we refer to it as traditional AI. And predictive AI is you're building models. You're simply building models. So you're taking historical data from a month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 5 years, whatever it is. You're taking that data and you're building a predictive model with a dependent variable that you're going to predict the likelihood of a specific outcome based on what's happened historically. And those models have been around for a long time. They've been in production for a long time. They're used, Netflix, like for example, the Netflix recommendation engine. If you give a thumbs up to, Glengarry Glen Ross, you give a thumbs up to Peaky Blinders. Well, great. Netflix is basically accounting for, okay, well, we're now predicting that when Ethan opens up his Netflix app, he's going to like these shows because they look like those shows. That's a recommendation engine. They're making a prediction, and then they're passing that into the user interface. So using predictions for a mortgage company or for an insurer or for a debt settlement firm, that's right. That you can do that today. And a lot of firms use it for a lot of different things. There's a lot of underwriting models out there. There's risk models. What we've focused on is the sales and marketing flows, and then what Jacob does is in the contact center areas. So really kind of the tip of the spear, and focusing on that function. And those traditional AI models, those predictive AI models, they are super easy to implement. You're getting values that you attach to records, and then you're basing activities off of those values within those records. So you don't need to think about, like in a perfect world, I would, like, generative AI is awesome. Think about using it. You can read up on a bunch of use cases. But for this audience, predictive AI, and Jake will talk about a good generative AI use case in a minute, but for this audience, predictive AI is the core. Like, that's what you need to kind of keep up, get current, make sure you're competing effectively. It's not expensive. You can either do it yourself, or you can use a firm like ours to do it. It's getting to be table stakes at this point. So that's predictive AI and generative AI.
Great, thank you. Before we go a little bit further on this, I want to do one more poll for the audience. We've got a couple of questions flowing in that we're going to get to as well, so I want to acknowledge that. But in the meantime, we want to ask a little bit about, between those, are you using predictive? Are you using generative? Are you using both, or not doing anything at all? So let's take a minute here again for the audience. If you'll click over to polls and jump in and give us an idea of what you're doing in your business. So we've got some answers coming through already. We'll give it just another second here. And
there's a lot of generative AI. That's an interesting.
Yeah, that is.
I wonder if those are enterprise level, like system wide, or that's individual usage. That's interesting.
Right, that is interesting. But right, I mean, it's going to bleed. If it is individuals, it's going to quickly bleed, right? There's such a blurry line between what's B2C consumer, because the expectations that you have as a consumer quickly show up in the business world, and you have those same expectations in the business world. So if you're using it in your day-to-day life, you're going to be using it in business, and vice versa very quickly. So, all right, looks like we've got a good representation across the board there. So I'm going to jump over and ask one quick question before we go on with our agenda. This is from, again, from the audiences. Are you worried about government regulation affecting the way companies use AI? And I think this is a good question about if people do have a concern of how much do we invest, are we going to invest a lot, and then there's going to be government regulations that are going to make it more burdensome, or, maybe we feel like we don't need to worry about regulation as much right now.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think that when I look at the risk of where government regulations are going to impact, like, my business, regulation over AI is not at the top of that risk list for I think for us personally, where we're representing brands and doing a lot of telecommunications and things like that. I think that's something that, if that does happen, there would probably be some notice and there would be time to prepare. I'm obviously not a lawyer, so I can't give legal advice there, but I think there's always that concern. But I think that I don't have any reason to currently.
Yeah.
Ethan, what are your thoughts?
I mean, we're in a deregulatory environment. I'm not worried about anything right now. No, I think data security is always the biggest thing, and data security is, the government doesn't care about data. Firms care a lot about data security. Customers care a lot. So data security has always been a topic, and it's still a topic, and it should be. It's, you want to certainly maintain your data. As far as regulation on generative AI, it'll be super. It's a huge conversation. It's a global conversation, probably too big for this group. But I would say for this audience and for this group, I would keep plowing ahead personally. I would just keep going. I'm not a lawyer, but if you're aligned, if your values, corporate values, are aligned properly, you've got data security as a principle of your business. It feels like that's a great foundation to go and innovate and try new things, for sure.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I think we're at a point where AI is becoming more pervasive, but it can still be a competitive differentiator in your business. And so the companies that are racing ahead and embracing it and being creative and experimenting with this are the ones that are going going to win. So, in thinking about that, we'll think about the journey of a lead from the very lead creation. If you know ActiveProspect, and maybe you're here knowing ActiveProspect and trusted form, like obviously speaking of regulation, the very most important piece of that is that you know that you have consent when that lead is captured, is consent to be contacted. And so using a solution like Trusted Form is capturing and record keeping of that consent. So you have that, right? That's kind of the table stakes, number one. And then as soon at the very beginning of that lead generation, where we start to see AI show up and we're leveraging AI and solutions, thinking about this is around how we're preventing fraud. So making sure that that lead represents an actual person that actually filled that form out. There's things that we can detect and try to flag, and then through data points around that lead being created. Obviously, there's some things that we can't manage and understand, but trying to get ahead of that as much as possible, just right at that very point of lead creation. So then from there, then it starts to flow. We've got that. Now this customer or consumer is expecting to be contacted. They're expecting to be contacted for a particular reason, for a particular brand. And so with that, Jacob, would love to talk about, what do you think about AI at that point? So assuming we've hit the table stakes, we've got consent, we believe this to be a real person that expects to be contacted. Where do you bring AI into the conversation at that point with your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll focus more on the generative piece and some of the kind of reactive AI that we use internally to help us educate our business decisions and even our coaching decisions. I'll just kind of give an example of something that may happen. So about a year and a half ago, we had a partner who wanted every single one of our calls listened to and reviewed, which makes sense, right? We're sending these transfers over. And the truth is, most teams and most sales teams will have some QA process where they might QA an agent a few times a month. They might review those calls, and that's what they're basing that agent's quality scores, compensation off of. And the sheer volume of calls to really make quality assurance a significant sample is much larger than a single human has bandwidth for. Where our company may be making 500,000 calls a day, you can imagine how many calls we would have to sample for that really to be significant. So we kind of came up with this idea, hey, we're going to build a tool that transcribes every call just to check these key important factors, like just sheerly from a compliance perspective. Okay, great. So we built this tool, but quickly we realized that we had all of these transcriptions of these calls. And in many cases, our partners wanted us to retain the third-party leg of these calls for billing purposes and for reconciliation purposes. So we had this whole, just tons of data and tons of insights that were kind of difficult to tease out because they were just in transcriptions. So we built this model, and now what this has turned into is a tool that we use internally, and our partners, most of our partners utilize it too. It's called Peel Voice AI. And there's really 5 key tenets to Peel Voice and what it does. One is obviously compliance. We make sure that from these transcriptions that DNCs are processed correctly, that opt-outs are processed correctly, and that those APIs are firing off correctly to our partners. Required statements and things for compliance in the different verticals that we work in, financial services, healthcare, those are all really, really important. Now we also are able to tease out quantitative analytics out of qualitative data. So let me give you an example. We had a partner recently where we took all of their not interested leads. So we would contact a lead and we would speak to that lead and they would say they were not interested. And we said, okay, let's take this not interested disposition. Let's run it through this transcription tool and let's tease out reasons. And they found that on 25% of those not interested leads, they had trust issues with the company. And now this company has a direct sale model. So they had issues with the door-to-door reps that were in their homes, and they had concerns if the pricing was upfront. And so we were able to directly send that feedback to the partners, where they may have thought originally, hey, there's just 500 people that aren't interested. Well, no, there's 100 of those that have an issue with someone that was in their home, and you've got to get to the bottom of that to improve that customer experience. So those are two tenets. The third that I would say is sales enablement. We use this tool for sales enablement. We have a partner who's a very large mortgage provider, and we were running a campaign for them that was on products that were completely equity driven. So we would reach out to these people that had a propensity or an interest in an equity product, either a cash out or a HE loan or something of that nature. And we would transfer them into their loan officers, a warm transfer, and say, hey, Ethan, I've got Margaret on the phone and she's interested in some equity options. And we ran this tool on their pitches, and we found that 85% of the time, those loan officers were pitching interest rate products. They weren't pitching equity products at all. Now you can imagine the chagrin of the marketing team, but I think that AI is the perfect marriage counselor between marketing and sales, because you all of a sudden you get this data that you can't really disagree with, and you say, this is what it is. So how do we take this data and act on it? So we obviously provided that feedback to our partners, and they were able to make adjustments on the sales side. So, and that will ultimately yield great results for us as their partner, because if they're closing more deals, our partnership is much stickier, and it accelerates that sale, it improves that sales process for them. And then obviously on the agent side, that's huge. We have 400, 500 agents that are dialing. We need to make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing for us. So performance enhancing analytics on our agents and their pitches. So we're able to coach them. We have something that we've built called a grit score. And it is that agent's effort in understanding and overcoming the objections of our partners, of the leads for our partners. So we've built in grit score into things that we're measuring on our agents. And then the last thing that I'll say is improved efficiency. And I think this might be the thing that is most understated, but potentially most useful. In the past, when we would go to coach an agent that's clearly having a performance issue, we get a team lead who pulls a call recording. They go and they search for a call recording where there's something that really stands out that they can coach on. So that might take 5-10 minutes. They listen to that call recording, they come up with their coaching. That might take another 5 to 10 minutes. Then they send a message on Google Chat or Slack or Teams to that agent and say, hey, hop on this Google meeting with me. Hop on the meeting. They're coached for 5 to 10 minutes. They wrap it up. 45 minutes have passed and we've coached one agent. All of a sudden now, the improved efficiency that we have, where we say, we have a system where we can say, hey, this happened on a call, send it to the agent, acknowledge, team lead, acknowledge. The sheer volume of coachings that we're able to get at a much more efficient pace is huge. And I think that is the real opportunity on the contact center side for using AI, is the massive efficiency that the yield that you can get by taking a little bit of effort on the front end to build these systems that will enable you to be much, much better in the future. So now this Peel Voice tool is a tool that our partners are wanting to license and use and run their own calls and their own data through. And that's been a great advantage for us, which is interesting because when we started, it was sheerly compliance, but we recognized that opportunity and the need that our partners had, and we were able to build a tool to help accommodate them. So I'm really excited about it. And I'm excited because I guarantee there's use cases that we haven't even considered yet. And if you've set up these LLMs and you've set up these systems properly, you should be able to always be on kind of the cutting edge of what's next. And we're excited for that.
I think that's a great, thanks for sharing that. Just the idea of how you can ingest a lot of information and then scale the feedback and coaching around that for the people optimization side of it. That's really powerful. I want to pivot though too and think about the lead quality and what you can do with the data side of it. So I feel like we have the people side and we have the data side. So Ethan, I'm jumping over to you. Before we do that, I want to run a poll and ask the audience a little bit about what you're doing with the leads that you're getting today. And so if everybody will just jump over to the poll, this is our last poll. We're not going to make the audience work any harder than this, other than asking questions. But are you getting third-party data to help you verify your leads? Are you enhancing your leads? And are you doing any custom values to help improve your sales process? So we'll give everybody a chance to think about that and answer the poll there. We've got a couple of responses coming in. So again, we've got the people side of it, which we heard about from Jacob, and then we want to talk about data side of it as well and how we can really address both of those. And both ways we'll talk about it. It impacts people and the data quality, of course, but let's see here what we've got. Okay, so we've got a little bit of third-party data coming in, verify, enhance, and we've got a couple of responses on custom values. So Ethan, I'll hand over to you to take over the conversation at this point, knowing that you've got an audience that's kind of covering all of these options.
Yeah, there's an audience. So, I mean, I'm looking. There's less than 10% are not using AI at all, which is awesome. So it's an audience of peers. It's really nice. It's very good to be on. And I just building on before I move to the lead side, moving on what Jacob was saying. The training piece, and I love the grit score. Like the grit score is a feature that I think people can get excited about, because you're spending time with your agents and your reps, but you're not focusing just on the outcomes, right? Or the call volume. One level it's, hey, how many calls did you make? How many transfers did you do? And you're focusing on like a high level input and then a high level output, right? So that's great. That's helpful. But the minute you start digging in and you use something like a grit score, right? Well, that's coachable, right? Like grit is coachable, because you can say, hey, like you need to be a little more persistent. If you get an immediate no, then here's some responses that the rest of the team's using that might be effective. And people want to just get better, right? Generally, most folks just want to get better, and it's really given them super tactical stuff that they can now implement that isn't just, and we see it with, we focus primarily on the sales agent side, on folks that are closing deals. And rather than just saying, okay, well, you close X number of units, you were X efficient, you can start to, once you are building these predictive models, you can really start to show them their tendencies, things that they're strong at, certain regions of the country, certain times of day, when they get their third lead or their seventh lead or their 10th lead in a given day. How effective are they? Are they effective with folks that like to have longer conversations? Are they more effective with folks that like to have shorter conversations? So you can start to see these trends, and then that becomes, again, like that's tactical. You can actually make a change that the outputs will come, right? The result will come, but now you can make some adjustments. So I love how you guys are thinking about it, and the grit score is amazing. I'm gonna borrow that. So yeah, on the data side, again, using predictive AI primarily here, is we really think about 3 steps when most of our customers are spending anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 a month up to $5-10 million a month on marketing. So those are inbound requests coming in. They may or may not be leveraging a call center, but the biggest part is how to assign those leads. That's really the tip of the spear, how that lead assignment is made. And like Jacob, you pointed out, it can be if you send somebody into somebody's house and they don't trust them, well, that's not great, right? Like that's a tough initial start. And the same thing when you make that initial lead assignment, you want to have some type of pairing, some type of resonance with that initial lead assignment. So we really focus on that initial lead assignment as the place you can have the biggest impact. It's the top of the funnel. And using predictive AI there, what you're doing is as every lead comes in, you have the ability to look at that lead. You know everything that you know about that lead. You know what the customer's looking for. You know where they came from, what time of day they came in, some specifics of their situation, some specifics of the product they're looking for. And you, as a sales org or as a marketing org, have a lot of information historically on what you've done with similar types of customers. So there's your lead score right there, right? So all you're doing is you're taking your past performance over 3, 6, 12, however many months you want to use, you're taking your past performance, you're building effectively a lookalike or a propensity model to basically say, okay, great. Well, I've seen this type of customer before. I know historically all of my data is telling me I am more successful with this type of customer. Then you have a lead assignment decision to make. Do I send it to a third-party call center like Squeeze? Do I keep that in-house and make that outbound dial myself? Maybe I just send them a text if it's a lower value prospect. So having a lead score or some type of evaluation where you're looking at the specific propensity of that new lead record relative to everything else you're getting is, again, table stakes, right? You need to have that. And whether you're doing that yourself or whether you're getting that from a third party, you can enhance it with data from ActiveProspect, with TransUnion, everybody out there. There's a lot of different data sources that you can use to enhance that lead, but really being clear about the likelihood of that lead. And then back to the lead assignment, you can now leverage, a little bit about that lead. You know a lot about your sales team. So historically what they like, what they do better with. This is now just pairing. This is back to the Netflix example. This is a recommendation engine. Every new record that comes in, as that lead comes in, well, you've got 100 sales agents or 20 sales agents or 500 sales agents. You know the history of each one of those agents. You have that in your data. You know what they've closed, what they haven't closed. In the Netflix example, you know what they've given a thumbs up to or what they've given a thumbs down to. So now as that new record comes in, hey, you have a very good idea for each of your agents, how likely they are to close that particular lead. Did they like it in the past? Did they not like it in the past? So we really think about leads. There's so much information buried in leads, but you have to then tap into your historical information in order to pull that additional data out. You can go out and, again, enhance and verify and do a lot of other things with that lead record when it comes in. But the value is the big value for us, unlocking the value of your historical conversions is a huge aspect of making that initial lead assignment decision.
That's great. I think both of you come at this from slightly different angles, but very complementary in terms of thinking about what are you learning about the leads and how leads are converting and responding in certain agent scenarios, paired with the coaching and to just have this precision engine that can run when you think about leveraging both of these kinds of solutions. So thank you both for sharing that and giving our audience a lot to think about in both of those scenarios. I want to take it to a question that we have coming in, which is, are there any requirements that you require to acknowledge the calls are recorded and documented via AI to the consumers up front before they engage in a conversation? So do you need to disclose use of AI when you're asking or when you're engaging with a consumer where you've leveraged these tools?
Yeah, that's a good question. And once again, I'm not a lawyer, and so I'll say a couple of things. First, anything that we do, we work through the legal department of our partners. And so we always defer to them and get sign off on whatever processes that we're running. But what I will say is I know if there needs to be disclosure if you're speaking with an AI agent. Now, these calls are not recorded necessarily by AI, but they're run through a process that's driven by AI. So it's a batch of call recordings that are run through a process so there's obviously the disclosures like this call is being recorded and things like that are absolutely essential. But for the data enrichment, we defer to our partners and their compliance teams on how we approach that.
Somewhat related to this a little bit is, what do you think of, this is a question also from Joe Tran in the audience. What do you think about AI for sales for outbound calls or SMS to respond to leads? And do you have concerns with compliance around that?
I can take that one. We have partners that have tested it, especially on outbound. And as of now, I don't think the models are strong enough to really outperform a great agent. And there's concerns, and people can still tell to a certain level. One thing that we have seen success with is off hours AI agents, where we disclose, so like Squeeze, for instance, we might work from 7 to 7 Mountain. After 7 p.m., we're still getting follow-up calls from our branded call displays with our partners. And so we'll have an AI agent that'll say, hey, Margaret, this is Jacob. I'm an AI agent, and I'd like to schedule a time for someone to reach out to you. And so I think there's ways to absolutely utilize it and tap into the things that AI is really good at right now. And while also waiting for some of those models to catch up. But I personally still think that the human touch is really, really important in the sales process. Like when you think about all the concerns of data security, when I'm refinancing or purchasing a home or working on a big purchase, I want to speak to a human, and I want to have that level of accountability with them one-on-one. I don't know if that's how everyone feels, but I am certainly in that boat.
And I would build, I think it's interesting, like just to challenge Jacob a little bit, like I think it's interesting. in that, yeah, like this technology is coming.
Right.
The firms, you know, Squeeze is like in a perfect position to figure this out and to balance it, right? And it's not that Squeeze is going to get crushed because Squeeze has humans. Squeeze is going to figure out, okay, this AI for sales, for outbound calls and SMS, like that's a great question. Like Squeeze is at the forefront. They're going to figure out how to leverage. I assume you guys are talented.
Oh, we have pilots going on this right now. Yeah, we have pilots going for sure.
So you're going to figure that out,
Yep.
and so your function, the function, you still provide a function to your clients. You're going to get better and better at that function using AI, and I think that's like in that it's important for all of us, right? Like none of us are getting wiped away. We just have to figure out as these technologies, how are in the thing that you do really well, like the thing that we do really well is we predict outcomes at scale. So that's what we do really, really well. So we're going to use the technology we have to just do that better. If you're a mortgage originator, you know, the thing that you do really well is you help customers into loans. Like you're going to use generative AI, you're going to use predictive AI to do that better. So again, it's like the concern. We talk a lot about the people getting wiped out and jobs going away and all these other things. That could happen, but that's not certainly the future I'm planning for, right? The future that you guys are planning for is the leaders in our industry and the leading firms are going to adopt and absorb the technology and, you know, use it to just get better and smarter and more efficient. And the folks on this call that are listening to this call, like, are at the forefront. You know, they're like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to do more of that. Just tell me how to do it. So hopefully we're doing something.
You're totally right. And I'll just say, you know, Ethan had a great LinkedIn post. Was it earlier today that you posted that talked about early adoption? Like these models are so rapidly improving and the applications are so rapidly improving that you want to be at the forefront and be aware of what's happening and testing these things and creating situations where you can really figure out what's working and what isn't, and you can refine those things. Because Margaret, I love that you mentioned this earlier. Those things that are nice to have will very quickly become have to haves as soon as other people have them, because it's no longer, it's a competitive disadvantage to not be implementing those tools. And so you always need to be testing and iterating and trying these things. And yeah, like on the outbound AI agent, like that's coming. That's down the line and automated. I mean, when you take those predictive models and you can text people that are going to respond to a text and you can call people when they're going to pick up the phone, like you have to be able to adopt these things and intake this information and not be caught, unaware when that definitely happens.
Yeah. I think we're talking a lot about it from the provider perspective. But from a voice of consumer perspective, when you think about it from that side, if you rewind a little bit, when things started getting super personalized, if you were on a website and you got an email right after that, right? And used to joke it's, like, I don't know, that's really creepy. They're looking at me on the website or they're this or that, and I used to say, because I did a lot of work in that area, was it's only creepy when it's unexpected. But what's expected is different for each consumer. But now you expect that, and you have people that even game the system of, I'm going to abandon my cart so I get a discount code within 4 hours or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And so the consumers grew to have that expectation, and I think AI is the same. If you think back a few years ago, I know I used to I'd be engaging with a chat and I would try to figure out, am I talking to a person or am I talking to a bot, and now I don't even care, as long as the job to be done gets done. And, I mostly am expecting I'm probably interacting with a bot, but if it's faster and it's accurate and it solves the problem or answers my needs super quickly, then I don't even care. I'd rather it be that, if that's the case. I don't want to waste somebody's time with something, a simple request or knowledge or something. So I think the consumer side of that is quickly coming along to this, anticipating that those things are happening, and then going from anticipating to expecting a better experience, because they're expecting providers to be using these kinds of tools to improve that consumer experience.
Well, and you think in 10 and 15 years, you've got these kids in high school and college right now that are using ChatGPT for all of their assignments, and they've got the app on their phone. I mean, I've seen it with my family members where, they've got a question and they'll put it in a ChatGPT and talk about it. That's that's going to be normal. That's the world that they're growing up in. It's different than the world that I grew up in, but we'll have to adapt and be ready for that.
But if we pivot back to operational things for a little bit here, we've got a couple more questions in that I want to make sure that we get to. Ethan, this one might be a good one for you. Is do generative and predictive AI models integrate with other lead acquisition platforms? So I know we certainly have our customers that are most successful in their lead buying and their lead conversion strategies are integrating this. They're using tools like our lead conduit, other kinds of tools for that. And so what do you see in terms of how those are integrating, where they're integrating?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the answer would be yes to the question. And I mean, lead conduit is like a great example. And I think lead conduit is relatively inexpensive. Lead conduit gives you the ability to access any provider you want, any models you want, any of these tools. A system like lead conduit, there's some, Salesforce does a bunch of that work as well through the App Store. But lead conduit in our industry makes it very easy because you're not building extra API. Your developers are not building extra APIs. You're not building the models. So yeah, the answer is yes. And I think the question is when you talk to people, whoever asked the question, great question. When you do talk to vendors that come and say, hey, I've got a predictive model here that's going to enhance your lead or going to allow you to assign your lead more effectively in our case, or allow you to have a higher contact rate in the case of Jacob. Then it's just a simple question of like, how do you integrate, right? Like, is it easy for me to, and they say, well, like most of them at this point are going to say, look, it's an API connection through and if you use lead conduit, when people tell us they use lead conduit, my face lights. I'm like, oh, great. Even easier, right? We don't have to go through, 2 to 3 days of API post testing. We don't even have to do that. We just connect right with lead conduits. So hopefully that answered the question, but the answer is yes. And if they're not, then it's going to complete system overhaul. And then they're asking you to do change management and take new software and all the other stuff. And you can do that certainly if you're in the need, if you're in the market for that. But folks like us and even like Jacob that are operating, I don't expect anybody to change any of their systems. When we come to them and say, hey, here's what we're going to build you a custom model to help you assign leads, prioritize leads, and nurture leads more effectively. I'm not saying go take a bunch of new software and go train your team and go have a 3-month onboarding. No, we're saying we're going to do these things. We're going to make it better with this existing systems you have. So that should be, I think, for most contact centers and lead buyers, that should be the expectation.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Absolutely. That should be the expectation. Table stakes once again.
Yeah. Well, we've got 2 more questions and they're perfect for a wrap-up topic around predictions in AI. So I'll do one and then I'll wrap up with the very last question here. So the one I'll put out next to last is, with the new AI brands popping up every day, how do we prioritize which ones are the best and safest in terms of data security?
Okay. Can I take that one, Jacob, and then I'll pass it to you. So there is a question, I think, in that first part with like the new AI brands. So I think just in dealing with that, because we get that too, you're another AI brand. I mean, I think ultimately the question to whoever that partner is, whoever you're talking to, is like, how is it going to help your business? What is it actually going to do? Make sure that there's valid use cases. We typically start out with 1 use case or maybe 2. We try to make it easy. Like, we're not trying to boil the ocean. We're trying to help you get a 10 to 15% lift on how you're assigning leads. Like, that's what we're doing. And then we're going to give you another 10 to 15% on how you're prioritizing leads. And then another 10 to 15% on how you're nurturing leads. Those are singles. That's the world that we live in. So I think you should ask, when you're looking at a new vendor, it's always, okay, what's the use case going to be? And is it going to help me? And are we going to prioritize it internally as well? But then the next question is, as far as data security, send them through a vendor review. Make sure that they're following, they have proper procedures to keep data secure. Talk to them, talk to their customers, ask them if they have issues. We don't take PII, so that's one thing. Like, we made that decision early on that we are not consuming PII, and so that's made that significantly easier. So ask that distinction: what data fields are you taking, and is there PII compromise? Typically, most big banks, at least that we deal with, vendor review goes much smoother if you're not consuming PII. Yeah, ask them and then ask their customers.
Yeah, good guidance. Okay, last question we have here to wrap up. In terms of generative AI, what do you think the next evolution of it will be, and how will that impact the industry? I'm leaving you with a zinger.
I love it.
That is a zinger.
Great question.
One thing that I think, and I'm starting to see it now, but I think we're going to start seeing models that build customer experience scores that kind of take in everything holistically from the lead generation to whatever event and help create a customer sentiment score so that people can work to optimize that. I think like that's directly correlated to like NPS. But for existing customers, I think that's something that is going to continue to be refined as all of these different data points become available through AI. They will be able to build these models that really create a sales experience that is truly conducive to not only the customers sticking with that brand, but transacting at the end of it. And I think that that will be something that very shortly is going to be commonplace.
Yeah, I would say along those same lines, it's going to be on the customer, on the consumer experience side. And Mark, you mentioned it, like how easily we're adopting. We're just like, our expectations are as consumers, our expectations, they're changing very quickly. And so I think one of the challenges of our industry, certainly industries that we serve, is there's still this idea of data in and then send it through a process and pull a widget out the back end. And I think the expectation of the customer is going to change, and the experience for the customer. Most of the Gen I, the evolution for Gen I within our industry is going to be how the customer interacts with your brand or with even the lead provider, and how they talk about their situation, how they share their information with you before they get on a call with an agent. And then, of course, their expectations are going up. So if they're involved in a process that is flushing out and pulling out, like, what benefit are you looking for? Where are you at in the sales process? Like, what kind of customer are you? Who else is involved in the decision? Like, if all that happens before that prospect hits your sales floor, well, then, back to your point, Jacob, of like selling HELOANs to, or like talking interest rate to people that, you got to be connected with that. So you've got to you're going to see a much higher conversion rate. Everybody's going to win. It's going to be more efficient. But we as lead provider or lead buyers, just have to match the expectations there. So that's, I think, and it's like right here. I mean, it's going to, in a year, you can see like conversion rates should go up. Everybody should get more efficient. If you're just grinding through data and you're committed to just doing that, I think it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. So.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you, Ethan, Jacob. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I think we're going to go to a wrap-up slide where some links where people can connect with you over LinkedIn, get some more information. And thanks to our live audience for great questions. And thanks to anyone that's listening to the recording after. We welcome connecting with anybody through LinkedIn or emails. Give us a call, and we'll have our bots get back to you. Thanks so much.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, audience.